Please help me in welcome Darcy Sims.
Thanks. Thanks, Michelle. Well, I want to add my welcome and appreciation for all of you this morning, and before Michelle runs away, appreciation for Phaneuf Funeral Home. There are 22,000 funeral homes in the United States. Less than 10% do anything past the funeral. Phaneuf is one of the ones who does far more than the funeral. They truly have embraced the idea of funeral service, providing not only wonderful services before need and at need, but also follow-up and community education and support. And I'm just so thrilled to be a part of their continued community education. But we came this morning to talk about something that's near and dear to probably everybody's heart in one way or the other. And my question for you this morning is that, are you a caregiver or a caretaker? Is that just a play on words, or is there a difference between being a caregiver and a caretaker? And if there is, what's the difference? And how do we take care of ourselves if we find ourselves in that particular role? Whether you find yourself in that role as a professional or you find yourself in that role as a family member. Most of us at some point will be called upon to provide care for someone, whether they are ill or not. If you're a mother, if you're a father, if you are a family member of any way, we have to provide care for each other. And there are lots of elements that we don't even think about that may influence ourselves, and particularly how we could take care of ourselves. So that's what we're going to talk about this morning. We're a nice small group, so I'd like us to be able to talk with each other, not me just talking at you all morning long. But let's get started and see what happens if I can get the technical pieces to work. Once I got to live the American dream. We were a very happy family, military by career, and parents by choice. I grew up in the military. My father was a general in the Army. I think I purposely sought out a military man to marry. I kind of like that gypsy life. I don't clean house. I just move all the time. Well, it's true. Every time the windows need washing, by gosh, the government's been very compliant and said, gosh, you need to move. I went, awesome. And even now in our second year of retirement, I have a feeling that we are not going to stay any place. I know how to move. I don't know how to stay. But I had the American dream. I was a psychologist by training. We had 2 great kids. I never got to live in anything that looked like that. If you know anything about the military, that never was anything that I got to live in. But I had the dream. I had the fairy tale. I had everything I could have wanted. Until one day we discovered that you can't paint rainbows on walls and expect them to stay. And in the end, we had to say goodbye to our little guy, who died of a malignant brain tumor at the age of 13 months, 30 years ago. And 30 years ago, there wasn't much available in the way of support for grieving families, or even in support for families who were desperately trying to figure out how to do this. Hospice was a new movement in our country. And while many communities had a beginning hospice, none of them served the pediatric needs. So we found ourselves in the wilderness, both before his death and certainly afterwards. And I learned a lot about me and my family and the tenacity of the human spirit. What I did learn is that if I can't help somebody, I just need to get out of their way. Because families are going to do what they need to do and want to do, whether we're there to help or not. And my goal is always to be a helpful presence instead of one of those harmful presence. But once in a while, we kind of have to take a few minutes out to look at who we are and what we're doing and what brings you to this field. Most people come to the field of care providing not by choice, but because of circumstance. You have been dragged, pushed, thrown into, shoved off of, or suddenly elected to the role of a care provider. We do it well. Most people rise to the occasion and can sustain that energy for a very long time, far past what any of us thought. If someone had said to you, you're going to be providing care for the rest of your life, or this is your profession, you would have said, well, I don't know if I could do that. And yet we do. We find that it feeds us, that it supports us, that for many of us it becomes a passion in our lives. But it also is quite expensive. It's one of the most expensive professions that you could have chosen, because it demands not just the academic, not just the head part of you, not just the cognitive development part, but the heart work as well. This isn't just head work. This is soul work. This is heart work. And in that, it does take its toll. So I thought this morning, I appreciate you coming. We've carved out 2 hours of time to look at us, to look at the care provider, to see what feeds us, what depletes us, how come we're doing what we're doing. And if we could get a handle on that, maybe we could figure out how to create a little island of respite for ourselves, because you cannot endlessly go to the well and expect it not to dry up at some point. So my job this morning, and I invite you to be a part of that, is to look at us. What on earth is it that we do? When the American dream ends for all of us at some point, we end up in this world.